When I first turned the brass key and pushed open the door to my dream house, I thought it would be the beginning of peace. The smell of fresh paint, the gleam of polished oak floors, the sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, it all felt like proof that I had finally made it. This was mine. My space. My sanctuary. But 2 months later, that illusion cracked. I walked in after a late client meeting, my silk blouse clinging to my skin from the August heat. My heels clicked against the marble entryway, but the sound was drowned out by laughter. Familiar, too familiar. I froze. There were cardboard boxes stacked in my hallway. A pair of my younger brother's sneakers sat tossed carelessly by the door. And then I saw my mother, humming softly as she rearranged my kitchen cabinets like she'd lived here all her life. My father's deep voice drifted from the living room, mingled with the sound of a game on TV. And there was Jason, my brother, sprawled across my white leather couch, his feet kicked up, remote in hand, like a king in a castle he didn't build. I stood there, holding my handbag tightly against my side, heart pounding. This wasn't just about space. This was about history. About all the years they doubted me, dismissed me, told me I'd never amount to much. I thought buying my dream house meant freedom. Instead, it became a stage where my family had shown up, uninvited, ready to make it their own. I wasn't always the woman standing in a marble entryway, staring down at boxes that weren't mine. Years ago, I was the girl standing in a cramped kitchen in Ohio, clutching a college application letter my parents had already torn apart. Business school? Rachel, don't be ridiculous, my father had said, lowering his newspaper. His tone wasn't angry, just dismissive, like swatting at a fly. You'll never keep up with those kinds of people. Be realistic. My mother had chimed in, her hands busy washing dishes. You should stay closer to home. Get a steady job at the clinic, maybe find someone dependable to marry. Dreams don't pay bills, Rachel. I remember my hands shaking, paper crumpling between my fingers. My chest burned, but I swallowed the words I wanted to scream. If I spoke, I'd cry, and crying would only make me look weaker. Jason, my brother, laughed from the hallway.
Yeah, Ratch.
Who's gonna take you seriously in business? You can't even balance a checkbook. The sting of those words still presses against me like a bruise that never healed. That night, I sat on the porch steps, staring into the dark. My grandmother, the only person who ever seemed to see me, shuffled out with her cane. She lowered herself beside me with effort, slipped something small into my palm, and closed my fingers around it. It was a tiny silver keychain shaped like a house. Her voice was thin but steady. One day, you'll have your own. Not because they gave it to you, but because you earned it. Promise me you won't let their doubts become your truth. Tears blurred my vision, but I nodded. I promised. The next morning, when my parents pushed me again to give up my applications, something inside me snapped. I packed a duffel bag, stuffed that keychain in my pocket, and left. I had nothing, no savings, no backup plan, but I had the fierce, trembling certainty that staying would kill me faster than failing. I walked away from the only home I had ever known, my mother shouting after me that I'd come crawling back. But deep down, I vowed I'd build a life so strong, so undeniable, that they would have no choice but to see me. And one day, I'd hold the keys to my own house. Starting over wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the kind of story you'd see in a movie montage with upbeat music and quick success. It was ugly, exhausting, and at times humiliating. When I first left home, I crashed on a friend's couch in Cleveland. I took 2 part-time jobs, waiting tables during the day, stocking shelves at a grocery store at night. My hands ached, my back screamed, and some mornings I had to choose between paying for bus fare or buying dinner. But every night, when I emptied my pockets onto that worn coffee table, I set down the silver keychain my grandmother had given me. That little house reminded me why I was enduring all of it. My turning point came when I got a job as a receptionist at a small marketing firm. It wasn't much, just answering phones, refilling coffee, and filing paperwork, but it gave me a front-row seat to how businesses actually worked. That's when I met Linda Hayes, the senior account director. She was sharp, confident, and unapologetic. The kind of woman who filled a room without raising her voice. She noticed me staying late, scribbling notes on discarded meeting agendas, trying to learn on my own. One evening, she walked by my desk, paused, and said, "You remind me of myself 20 years ago. Don't waste that hunger." She became my mentor. Linda didn't hand me success, but she gave me the one thing I never had before: belief. She taught me how to pitch ideas, how to negotiate without flinching, how to take up space without apologizing for it. Still, the climb was brutal. There were nights I cried quietly in my tiny rented room, wondering if my parents were right. I faced slammed doors, rejected proposals, and bosses who thought my ideas were too ambitious. I fought the stereotypes. The raised eyebrows when I walked into meetings, the way men twice my age assumed I was just the assistant. But slowly, painfully, the wins began to add up. My first breakthrough was landing a local bakery as a client. I poured everything into their campaign, designing flyers, building their social media presence, and hustling connections until people started talking about them. Their sales doubled in 3 months. That check might have been small, but it felt like I'd conquered a mountain. One client turned into 3, then 6. I started freelancing on the side, saving every dollar. I skipped vacations, skipped nights out, and skipped updating my family on anything beyond the bare minimum. They still thought I was barely scraping by, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Years passed. I built my own marketing consultancy. I hired a small team. I worked out of coffee shops, then a shared office space, and finally, my own sleek office downtown. Clients started trusting my instincts. My name carried weight, and for the first time, I could breathe without worrying about rent. The day I signed the papers for my dream house, the one with the oak floors and the sunlight-filled windows, I slipped the little silver keychain onto the actual house key. My hands shook, not with fear this time, but with pride. I had built this. Alone. Quietly. Without their approval. Without their help. And I had kept my promise to my grandmother. The night I found my family in my house, I didn't say a word at first. I just stood there, heels clicking softly against the marble as I stepped farther inside. My pulse was pounding, but my face stayed composed. Years of boardroom training teaching me to mask emotion when it mattered most. Jason glanced up from the couch, remote dangling in his hand. "Oh, hey, Ratch," he said casually, as if I'd just walked into his apartment. "You should have told us you had a place like this." My mother turned, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "We thought it would be easier for everyone if we just moved in. Your father's been having trouble with the house back home. And well, you've got all this extra space." She gestured toward the soaring ceilings and open-plan kitchen, like she was introducing her guests to her home. I glanced around. My carefully chosen decor, the ivory rug, the framed prints of skylines I'd collected, the glass vases that caught afternoon light, were buried under their clutter. Boxes stacked against the wall, takeout containers already on my granite counters. My father appeared in the doorway, beer in hand. "Nice place, Rachel. Didn't think you had it in you." His chuckle was low, tinged with disbelief, almost mocking. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. I traced my fingers over the little silver keychain hanging from my handbag, grounding myself in its weight. They didn't know. They didn't want to know. Jason smirked, stretching his arms across the couch. "So, who's paying for all this? Some guy, right? You always said you'd never settle, but come on, no way you afforded this on your own." The words sliced through me, but this time, I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch until Jason shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. "This house, every tile, every beam, every inch, was paid for by me. My money, my work, my years of sweat and sacrifice. No man, no handouts, just me." The room went still. My mother blinked, as if she hadn't processed what I said. My father frowned, his mouth parting slightly. Jason laughed once, awkward and forced. "Yeah, right." I walked into the living room, heels sinking into the rug, and leaned on the back of a chair, leveling my gaze at all of them. Do you see that artwork on the wall? Commissioned by an artist I helped launch with my agency. That office down the hall? It's where I negotiate contracts worth more than you can imagine. And this house? It's a symbol of every single moment you told me I couldn't do it. I could see it, the disbelief unraveling into shock, then into something heavier. Shame. My mother finally spoke, her voice small. Rachel, you never told us. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. Would it have mattered? When I wanted to go to business school, you told me to marry someone safe. When I wanted to leave, you said I'd come crawling back. You never asked what I was building because you were too busy tearing me down. My father's face tightened. For once, he had no retort, no lecture. Jason muttered, "So, you're saying you're, successful?" I turned to him, my voice steady. "I'm saying I built an empire while you sat on the couch waiting for someone else to hand you a life." Silence settled, thick and undeniable. For the first time, my family was forced to see me, not the girl they dismissed, but the woman who had made it despite them. I stood taller, my hand brushing the silver keychain again, and I let the final words drop like a gavel. "This is my house. And from this moment on, you play by my rules or you don't stay here at all." Their stunned faces were the confirmation I'd waited years for. The silence in the living room stretched like a wire pulled too tight. For once, no one interrupted me. No one dismissed me. They just stared, their world tilting under the weight of a truth they hadn't expected. I set my handbag down on the console table, deliberately, my fingers brushing the silver keychain again. It reminded me to hold firm. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "If you want to be here in my home, then you live by my rules. If not, you leave. Tonight." Jason scoffed, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "Jason, you first. You've wasted years waiting for life to hand you something. If you stay here, you're not lying on my couch all day. You get a job. You pay rent. And you learn what responsibility feels like. This isn't a crash pad. It's a home for people who contribute." His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. For once, he had no snappy comeback. I turned to my father. His eyes were narrowed, defensive. "Dad, you've always believed strength was control, that raising your voice meant being right. In this house, respect is non-negotiable. You will not belittle me or anyone else here. If you want to stay, you learn to listen, to treat me as the adult I've become, not the child you remember." His mouth opened, then closed again. I could see his pride choking him, but behind it, maybe, a flicker of shame. Then I looked at my mother. Her hands were twisting the hem of her blouse, eyes downcast. "Mom, you've always tried to keep the peace by asking me to shrink, to be smaller, quieter, easier. In this house, I won't shrink. And I won't let you silence yourself, either. If you stay, you learn to use your voice. Not just for me, for yourself." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded faintly, as though some long-buried part of her understood. I took a deep breath, letting my words settle into the walls I had built. This house isn't a second chance for you to rewrite my story. It's a chance for you to rewrite your own. But make no mistake, my peace, my work, and my boundaries will not be compromised. Not again. The air was heavy, but I didn't back down. I had spent too many years bending, folding myself into shapes that suited everyone but me. Those days were over. Jason muttered under his breath, "You sound like a boss." I turned my gaze to him, unwavering. "That's because I am." For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, my father set his beer down on the table. My mother reached for his hand. Jason shifted uncomfortably, but didn't argue. For the first time in years, I wasn't begging for space or asking to be heard. I was laying down the law, and they knew I meant every word. This was my house, my rules, my life, and they could either rise to meet it or walk out the door. The days that followed weren't perfect. Change never is. But for the first time, I saw cracks in the old patterns. Jason actually set his alarm one morning and left the house in a pressed shirt, mumbling something about a job interview. He didn't say much, but when he came back that evening with grease on his hands and a small grin, I knew he'd finally taken a step. My father was the hardest to read. He still carried himself like a man who hated giving ground, but I noticed he paused more. He didn't bark orders in my kitchen. He asked. Sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with a grunt, but it was different. Small, but different. My mother, though, she surprised me the most. One evening, I walked into the living room to find her on the phone, her voice firm as she spoke to a friend about joining a local art class. She looked at me afterward, almost embarrassed, and said, "I've always wanted to paint again." For once, she wasn't asking permission. I smiled. Then you should. Every night, when I closed the door to my office, I sat in the leather chair by the window and let myself breathe. I'd look around at the house, the high ceilings, the golden light spilling across the oak floors, and remember the girl who once cried on her grandmother's porch steps, clutching a little silver keychain. I pulled that keychain out again one evening, holding it in my palm. The tiny metal house was scratched and worn, but it had carried me through storms. I whispered, almost like a prayer. I kept the promise. The past still hurt. Their words still echoed. But the weight of them no longer pressed me down, it pushed me forward. Because every insult, every doubt, every dismissal had built the steel in my spine. Now, standing here, I wasn't the girl who left home trembling with a duffel bag. I was the woman who built her own, brick by brick, against all odds. And as I turned the key in my front door, listening to the lock click into place, I knew one truth with absolute certainty. I bought my dream house, and this time, I'm the one who decides who belongs in it.